We are looking at a payment infrastructure system, which is basically a settlement infrastructure, which therefore operates off other switches, right? Within this space, we also have digital payment firms who are already operating. We have the banks themselves who are operating. And I've taken the time to take a look at the challenges experienced by EcoBank in trying to create such a thing over there. Now, individually, from your own experience, what did the March 2024 issue resolve? And once, if it's resolved that, are there still other serious issues that need to be addressed in order to ramp up the adoption of PAPSS?
What PAPSS has done that is quite monumental is, first of all, we have an opportunity on a continental scale to achieve real-time payments. Secondly, on a continental scale, we have been able to achieve interoperability, which means that we can switch payments between banks, third parties, aggregators in real time. That's monumental. The third thing that PAPSS has brought to the table, for example, is ease of use. And on top of that, I mean, side by side with ease of use, I'll put access, which is critical to payments, and the network effect that needs to come into that space to make it actually useful. So if everybody has access to that infrastructure, everybody can go and make that payment. It's significant, and we need to take note of that. So for us as banks, and let me not forget that this thing that PAPSS built has actually been built a number of times, including by our own InterSwitch. From a technology point of view, what is very important about this component is because now we have a continental framework agreed by all the countries in Africa, for example. So all those issues around regulation, protectionism by countries, for example, all the roadblocks that they put into payments, for example, have been typically removed. So for us as banks, what we need to do is to build strong use cases. Like the example given for between GCB and UBA, access, put it on your mobile banking app, for example. How do we bring in other parties? The network effects, the integration dynamics that comes with fintechs in Africa, for example, coming onto that PAPSS rail and making it one of the major aspects of payment and exchange. All of that things will follow in terms of import substitution, in terms of increasing employment, for example, and so on and so forth. Or even creating that network effect where people who have captive audiences in countries in terms of what they produce are able to sell and make money, as the case may be.
So for us at Access Bank, Africa is core to our strategy. And we are present in about 14 African countries and counting. And what we've done is that we've decided that for every country we operate in, we are going to integrate with PAPSS. So at the West Africa Monetary Zone of the 6 countries, we are present in 5, and we've integrated as well. And I think this is a transformative project. I recall the head of IT at PAPSS said, this is our own, and we should really take it as ours. In terms of the circular that was issued, I think it came at the right time. I recall when the PAPSS kicked off, and I saw the restrictions on transactional amounts. And what came to my mind is that here we go again. Are we going to be subjecting ourselves to the same regulatory environment that deals with FCIB denominated transactions? Because what will happen then is that stifles the adoption, not just by customers, but for banks as well. Because dealing with the regulatory space around FX in Nigeria today is quite cumbersome. So that lifting that restriction sends the message that, look, this might be different. And I know someone said in the audience around documentation requirements, I think we need to streamline it. What we have today in the FX manual is bothersome, not just for banks, but for customers as well. And we need to ensure that we don't fall into that same trap with PAPSS if we want to drive adoption and ramp up the volumes. I think the director of Trade and Exchange from CBN talked about the regulatory framework. I think it's still a little bit fluid today. There's a tendency to devolve to the current FX manual, which is, like I said earlier on, is cumbersome. So the earlier we have the regulatory framework to drive PAPSS, the better it is for adoption. The other thing I want to speak to is around settlement. So if we look at our payment system or cycle in Nigeria today, banks are struggling with settlement, and it has an impact on customer experience as well. So we need to make sure that in terms of settlement for PAPSS, we make sure we get it right so that it drives the adoption. Customers are willing to use that platform to initiate their payments.
My own opinion is that PAPSS is a journey. It's work in progress. But the good thing is that we've started well. Now, I always have this belief that African problems will be solved by Africans, whether we like it or not. We might get help, but again, you need to consider how free is that help that you're getting externally, right? Which brings to the fore that in Africa, we have to sit down, think local, build solutions that can help us, regularize and deal with the issues that we have. Now, I've heard about challenges around trade, whether payment alone can solve all the problems around trade. And that's very correct. But payment and technology, actually, combining them together, they provide this platform where you can begin to, start the solution and scale from there. Because with technology, you can drive digitization of your processes. Even the so-called legal frameworks that we are talking about, we can simplify them into, workflows that can make it a lot easier, in solving such problems. So for me, I think that there are a lot of opportunities that PAPSS brings. I remember in NIBS when we started instant settlement, it was like magic. Then recently we went to some countries in Europe where in a gathering like this, people gathered together and then they were celebrating instant payment. And we had to remind them that in Nigeria, we had achieved this years back, which means that, people thought that nothing good could come from Nazareth in the Bible, but Jesus Christ came from Nazareth, which is an opportunity. So in Africa, we can actually be the pioneer, we can lead, and like I said, since it's a journey, those challenges will be there. But I always believe that there's no challenge that cannot be solved. If we put our minds together, if we collaborate and work together, I believe that we can really get out of the woods and make it better as we proceed. Thank you.
Bolani, don't drop. Let me piggyback on your last question because you are giving a political response. So what are those specific challenges you see from a switching position? Just go ahead. Okay. We're already doing this.
All right. From the switching perspective, the first thing is the technology. Because, of course, the infrastructure has to be available, not just in terms of being online, but real time as well. So it takes a lot of resources, really, to make your infrastructure ready to be able to support those volumes that are coming. A lot of investment has to be put into that, into ensuring that you show up that. Then the area of data security is also very important. As we have gathered here, strategizing, those fraudsters who are gathered somewhere, exactly, and they spend more money, they are more efficient. Oftentimes, we play catch up. So data security, transaction security, fraud management are the things that are really, very important. I'm glad that Osita spoke about some of the things that they've also done to ensure security on the platform. Then the area of settlement, I was discussing with Femi earlier that at the end of the day, whatever we do, we should always think about the customers first. Anything that you're doing that the customer is not, or the merchant is not getting instant settlement, it means that we've not really gotten there. So instant settlement is very important. Yes, some people have started with same-day settlement, but then how fast can the customer get value, for those transactions? It's a journey that we need to really deal with, amongst other issues. And I believe that as we progress, some of these solutions will come out of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Bolani. I asked that question so as to make 2 points, which the bank, the transaction group heads may help us understand. And I really love what Femi said about we should take the wins we have and we can operate on that. But there's something about lying to yourself where you try to, there's a place for patriotism and there's a place for cold hard economic facts where data will tell you what exactly is there. In this business, it's just about numbers, right? At the end of the day. Both can coexist. But here's the question. So Osita said they don't have an ISO 27710, which came up in, I think, in December, after the other one they had in July, right? Most of the entities that have to use the services are still not at that level of service. So the global messaging system are not talking to each other. Some of them need to. Is either PAPSS is going to have to invest in helping them scale up to certify in order for you to get the adoption that is necessary. And I'm saying that to ask the question, what is your state of integration at each of your banks? How do you hope to ramp it up so that when we create this enthusiasm for customers, traders, and merchants, then they won't come back and meet a problem, which will be worse, because then when they feel the problem, they will be able to go.
Okay. So in terms of integration, I think it's gone relatively well, to be honest, given the speed at which this has happened. Like you said, it's one of the things we do in this part of the world that we take for granted. In other parts of the world, a payment platform like PAPSS will probably have taken a longer time. But at the same time, the speed at which we have gone about this, it's possible that there might be some loopholes we need to be aware of. But generally, from our own experience, it's gone relatively well, given the scale and the time we've taken to get to this point. Clearly, there will be challenges. We've talked about cybersecurity, but cybersecurity exists everywhere. But what is peculiar to us is around awareness for customers and giving them that assurance that the platform itself is robust enough to provide security for their transactions. But it's a journey. If I look at the payment infrastructure in Nigeria today, we still have challenges. And NIBs and other switches have been around for a far, far longer time. So with PAPSS, that's relatively new. Clearly, we have challenges we are dealing with today. But I think I must give kudos to the banks involved, to Afrexim, to PAPSS, to CBN, on how quickly we have gotten to this point. I think that platform is critical in driving economic prosperity across Africa. But we need to deal with those challenges. But the way I look at challenges is more of an opportunity to actually improve on the things we have today. But to have gone this far, to have gone live in about 5 countries already within the West African zone, I think we need to give ourselves a round of applause, honestly.
In terms of areas, I think we can, we need to relook and get some enhancement or fixes. I think how we settle in local currency is a key one for me. So the value proposition or the claim to fame around payment in your local currency is in some way qualified because settlement happens in foreign currency. Eliminating that, enhances the value proposition in my view. That's one. Two, there are certain settlement issues around how we are able to ensure STP, straight-through processing from an accounting entry standpoint, exposing the exchange rate, especially for incoming payments, where you're able to then have a tech job pull the data, pass the accounting entries without any human interface. Today, we have to do that manually. And with every manual process, there is opportunity for error and there's risk that could crystallize. The good thing is we've had conversations with the PAPSS team. They're working on that and they've given us a window of 3 to 4 months to get that done, which also speaks to how prompt and responsive they are. As a matter of fact, I think of most of the supranationals I've worked with, PAPSS or Afrexim generally, it seems to be the most commercially oriented. They are business focused, client focused, value focused, delivering to time, speed.
And that's why I'm saying that what PAPSS has come to solve for is very significant in Africa. Because they have come with a common platform, a common infrastructure where everybody is at ground zero. If you're coming onto PAPSS platform today, you're going to come and join that platform. Probably bring up your systems to a level where you're able to consume that service and be a member of PAPSS. So to that extent, it's still the same thing that has helped us in Africa in payments. So we start from somewhere high where we don't have to make the mistakes or suffer the setbacks that other people suffered to get to where they are. So PAPSS is new. You can get onto that payment infrastructure and quickly just start running with them, without having to deal with your legacy systems and so on and so forth. Number two, which we need to look at very critically, because again, I've seen payments across Africa, is in 3 levels. First and foremost, the cost of fulfillment for payments is very critical because Africa, the poverty level is quite high. So you need to look at what price points are you delivering payments. And that is why you see the issues around AfriGo card for NIBS, for example. People are building national schemes, trying to drive account-based payments. Because in account-based payments, look at what's happening in virtual accounts in Nigeria. Account-based payments are actually cheap and relatively easy to manage. And that is the construct that we have in the PAPSS environment, for example. So that is key. And back to that same infrastructure, there are a number of things that are on the back of this. So when we talk about trade is just a very small component. What about national card schemes like AfriGo, Gibbs cards or GH-Link cards in Ghana, for example? M-Pesa in Ghana, for example, coming onto a common payment infrastructure, and then there's core or hyper interoperability, and everybody can make payments and get settlement in real time on that same PAPSS platform. How much, if we extend it to something like even capital markets in different countries, for example? So again, it's a journey, just like everybody has said, but we need to look at it futuristically to see that this is a game changer for Africa as far as payments is concerned.